rack one. I'm first up. Check how do we know the difference? Yep, that's it. Yep.
It's an old staff. A few more selections. 5 o'clock. I think it's time to start our study session. I'll ask Summer to call roll, please.
Commissioner Patterson? Oh, sorry, she's not here. Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Baker?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts? Here. Commissioner Stallings? Here. Commissioner Dennis?
Here.
And Mayor Mason.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. At the Commissioner's request, discuss any items of concern on the regular session agenda. Anything you want to discuss on the agenda tonight before we get started? Besides these cool monitors.
I'm distracted by the monitor.
I know.
We're so distracted.
Technology. We're about to get an update on those.
Okay.
Just don't touch them now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With that being said, 3.1 legislative update with Mr. Curt Roggow.
Yeah. All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Session has adjourned finally, and that always takes place on the last Friday of May. I've said this for several years, 25 years. Every legislative session is different. Everyone like snowflakes, and this one proved just that. I'm a kind of a baseball guy. I always like to look at the pass-fail stats of kind of how session ended up. This year there was a lot of bills filed, and I just looked at the House and Senate bills only, not resolutions or anything like that. But you can see the stats, 3,100 bills that were filed this year, 148 were signed by the governor. And there's a kind of a new category with Governor Stitt this year, and that was he utilized the ability to send things to the Secretary of State to become law without his signature, which he can do. Typically, governors step in and they sign the bill or veto the bill. But if he does nothing during session, it's sent on to the Secretary of State without signature. He did that with a lot of bills this year. Typically, you might see half a dozen in governors past that they may do that with certain bills. So my tracking service had to create a new section in their code of bills that were sent to the Secretary of State without signature, still becoming law. But there were approximately 500 bills signed into law, which was about a 16% success rate. Last year it was 21%. So, you know, if you file a bill, the odds of you passing that bill are about 20 to 25%, but it was a little bit leaner this year. A lot of bills not heard in the House and Senate. Anyway. Vetoes. There were a lot of vetoes this year, 75 total. In the last 2 days, there were a considerable amount that were overridden. That was the colorful part of session. Words were exchanged. I think the governor apologized for some comments that he had made. The legislature took it personal as well, and things, all of a sudden, they started overriding the governor's vetoes. I would say of that 47, probably most of them occurred in the last 2 days of session. It was interesting to watch.
Hey, Curt.
Yeah.
Why do you think the percentage was lower on success of passing bills this year?
2 reasons. First, the House has a new committee structure. To pass a bill in the House, it has to go through 2 committees, all of your non-budget items. And so, you know, they just have if you start out in your first committee and it's dual assigned, you make it through that committee, it moves on to the second committee, then on to the floor. And there were a lot of bills that were passed that first committee that were not heard by the chairman in the second committee. The other thing that happened was there were a lot of bills that were passed in Senate committee, which only, for the most part, only has one committee assignment. Unless it's an appropriation measure, then it's 2 committee assignments. A little bit different rules over there. But there were let's see, I wanted to say there were 185 bills in the Senate that passed the very first committee and were not heard on the Senate floor. The floor leader blocked a lot of those bills from getting onto the floor. That was a high death rate, quite honestly, of bills. So it happened on the House side from in between committees, and it happened on the Senate side from committee to the Senate floor. That's where a lot of the death rate was.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
So as they were working through the whole budget process, there was some budget crisis situations. I always kind of like to take an overview of those. There was a private prison that all of a sudden that they had to purchase. That was a prison down in Lawton. The price tag was around $300 million. The private prison didn't want to sign a new contract, I guess, with the state. I don't know all the details, but the state was in a position where they had to buy that private prison. Mental health crisis, you saw this in the news every other day during session, where they had made a budget mistake within their own department. Some days it was 20 million, the other days it was 40 million. I don't know what the final number was, but it was probably around $40 million mistake. So much that in the last couple days, the legislature ran some legislation and fired the director of mental health, Department of Mental Health, which was a governor's appointment. And they can do that, which is rare. It happens. That's probably the first time I've seen it. And they fired that director. So they dealt with that crisis. OSU had a vet med accreditation issue around $295 million. They were put on some type of a probationary list. I don't know all the details there, but they had to deal with that crisis, that budget crisis. And when that happens to OSU, the other school, OU, smiles because they know that now they can ask for something. And that's the way you have to treat those higher ed facilities or higher ed in general. If you give to OSU, you've got to give to OU. It's just how it is at the state capitol. So that was kind of a ×2. And the bigger one that's going to be on every legislature, every state legislature is watching this, and that is a Medicaid crisis that potentially could hit the states. And that's where the federal government is potentially looking at pushing more of that responsibility onto the states, the funding, and who's eligible for Medicaid, and a lot of that responsibility. Potentially that could be $1.7 billion issue that the state has to deal with, but certainly around $1 billion.
Because they let it get passed by an initiative petition instead of taking care of it when they needed to and just have it in a statute. Once again, hideous.
Talking about the eligibility requirements, and this was about 10 years ago that this happened. So we missed out on some federal funding, I believe, during that time. And so, yeah, this is going to be a problem that not just Oklahoma, but every state is going to be watching, and as to how this may affect state budgets down the road if the federal government makes that decision. But all that said, there's always crisis that's going on and having to deal with that. Okay, so the state of Oklahoma ended up with about a $12.5 billion budget, which is pretty close to last year. And if you want to know, not just for you all, but listening audience, if you want to look at the details of the budget, you can go to the House website, which is okhouse.gov or oksenate.gov. And the legislature all of a sudden is very good about being transparent with the budget. The House started doing this last year. The Senate now opened up a portal. I prefer looking at the Senate portal. It's kind of easier on my eyes to dissect. Not everything that is funded shows up in the portal. For instance, this is something I got to work on, getting a little extra money for public transit. It doesn't show up on that portal because it's a pass-through to the Department of Transportation. So some of the pass-through stuff shows up in the legislation, but not on the portal. But for the most part, it's all right there. Tax relief, the budget also included a 1/4 point tax cut to state income tax. If you recall, Governor Stitt was really rallying for a half and a path, half a point on the tax cut and a path to zero income tax. Now, I want to talk about this just a little bit. And I won't sit here and advocate for path to zero or against it. But we need to know where we're heading with this. There are 9 states that don't have income tax. And that started with Texas, Alaska, and a few other states. Like I said, 9 total. Everybody started catching on. There's probably about 20 states that are on, they've already committed to a path to eliminate their income tax. It's political. It's a push card, something that candidates can put out there to lower taxes. And it would be great. Who wants to pay taxes, right? Nobody likes to pay taxes. But in the world of economic development, this is going to present a problem. Because all of our state incentives, the good ones, quality jobs, and other programs like quality jobs that the Department of Finance authorities help Commerce with, they're all tied to future employees' income tax. So when you have a quality jobs contract, and I know there's been several companies around Enid go through those, that's a way for the state to fund what I call gap financing for that company to expand their operation, to help with that. And so if we go to a path of zero income tax, we have to figure out how are we going to incentivize businesses. And if I'm predicting the weather, it's going to start resting a little bit heavier on cities, municipal governments, to dig in their pockets to develop incentive programs for future businesses to come in. And you see that obviously with Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and I know you've done it. We've done it here in the city of Enid, but I think it's going to become even more so, because I don't know that the legislature is going to have an appetite to prop that up in a different area, because that, it's a lot of funding that they're going to have to take care of when the income tax is that income stream for quality jobs. You have a question?
Yeah, I do. How will that affect our P3 funding that, on the withholding tax, the state withholding tax, that we've been funding Ames Waterline and, well, a lot of projects.
Yeah. No, it's a conversation that we're going to have more with our local officials, because I brought this up to a group of House and senators, House and Senate members in a little luncheon. We had about a dozen in the room, and I brought this up, and it didn't resonate as to what that decision would be down the road, because quality jobs programs are #1 incentive for the state, and there are others like it under different names that do different things, but they're all tied to future employee income tax. So anyway, I'm not trying to advocate for this or against this particular relief. We just have to be visionary as to what is the future of incentives and where's that going to come from and what is our part in all of that. So,
Curt, question for you. So are they talking about just eliminating federal and state taxes?
Okay, only state.
Just state.
Only state.
Okay.
Federal, that's DC, you're never going to eliminate. Okay. Never say never, but I don't see the feds wanting to get rid of income tax. But it is a trend that I'm seeing a lot of states dive into. And I will also say, here we are, border Texas. Texas doesn't have an income tax. That's always been an issue for us to deal with. But Texas has a very high property tax because the state of Texas has access to that property tax revenue. In Oklahoma, only the counties have access to that property tax. And so that's how Texas is able to do it, because they control that property tax as a state. In Oklahoma, it's the counties that control that property tax. So anyway, just things to think about, not decisions you have to make today, but things to think about 10 years from now, because if I were to predict the weather on this, it's going to happen. We just don't know when, because the trend of having to keep up with our other states, neighboring states, and competitors in this category is, they're zeroing out their income tax. And by the way, income tax
How will they be able to do that unless they make up the money? So,
Right.
so if they want to jack up the property taxes, that'd be fine, because that would line up with our argument that we need to be getting property
Right,
tax.
right.
But
Yeah.
people aren't going to like that either.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be difficult to achieve that, and be interesting to see what the vision does with, the next governor on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But I'm telling you, it's a trend line that it's getting more and more discussion, and it's, again, we're going to have to unravel that problem that's going to hit us with incentives, because you can make the case, oh, well, employees won't have to pay income tax. Well, that's great. But the employer is trying to find money, seed money, gap financing, to build the business. It takes a lot of money to actually build the business. And so, anyway.
And the employee that purchased the home will have to pay considerably more on the property tax. So
In Texas, because they control
that's what I mean, in
yeah.
Texas.
But in Oklahoma, the counties, they're, unless the state were to grab the property tax, then it would really go up,
Yeah.
But every state has different ways they tax their citizens. And in Oklahoma, we have it very compartmentalized.
And the way they do it in Texas, as far as like their road infrastructure, ODOT would have to take care of all of our streets internally. That's the way they do it in Texas. Because I have a property down there, and that's the reason why I know that. So the counties would be
You're right.
responsible for the infrastructure of all the streets within the city.
Yeah.
No longer would the city of Enid have to be responsible for that.
Or the state is maybe.
Or the state, yeah.
And that would be a great play 10 years from now, 15 years from now, is to make your counties more responsible for transportation. And it's going to morph into something. I'm just trying to get everybody.
We need to figure what we want it to morph into, so you can make sure it happens that way for us, Curt.
That's right. You're here. Okay, economic development front, and this is kind of energy and economic development a little bit, but the governor was promoting this behind-the-meter legislation, which basically means large entity, and this kind of is around your data farms, large energy users, to be able to come into the state and develop their own energy source, whether it be natural gas, nuclear, whatever the case may be, so that they have some private sector investment rather than just the utilities doing it. And that behind-the-meter legislation was a big deal for the governor. In every stump speech he gave, this was one of his topics, so that was a big win for him. And of course, you heard about the $4 billion aluminum smelting facility by Emirates. And by the way, I had no idea that aluminum was spelled two different ways. We have Western spelling, and then there's the rest of the world. I've just learned that on this deal. But that was the...
Which one's correct?
I think the first one, aluminum smelting, is the correct version.
Good answer.
The other one is another syllable that I have to throw in there. But this was the largest economic development announcement in the state. For all practical purposes, they're coming. It's right next to the port of the Tulsa ports over there by Enola, and there's going to be a lot of spinoff that happens from this. So it's very, very exciting. And the legislature basically pre-funded that incentive, which is tied again to income tax of future employees. And they pre-funded it to make sure that there was a commitment there. There was also a bill that all of the economic developers fought for across the state, and that's creating an oversight board at the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce does not have a board of directors. It is solely under the authority of the governor. And what we've seen over the past few decades is every governor that comes in, we have new leadership, and the game changes, and you shake up the contents of the box and dump them out again. And in the world of economic development, they don't want that. They want there to be stability, certainty, longevity in leadership. Somebody who's going to run commerce not just for 2 to 3 years, but maybe 7 to 10, 12 years, so that there's just a stable environment at the Department of Commerce creating an oversight board. This is an issue that was pushed last year, and the governor didn't like it. He finally agreed to the makeup of the board, which he gets barely the majority of the appointments, but it becomes more open and transparent, and the board then would be hiring the director. The last one on the economic development front kind of, I think, is a great note for here locally, and that is Senate Bill 130, nuclear feasibility study. It's just a study, but there is a provision in the legislation that is land and siting criteria, including specific geographical areas that are best suited for new nuclear generation, as well as cities near military bases. All of your military bases are under a directive to be self-sufficient with their energy for obvious reasons, and pick your flavor. That's been out there for a while, and I know the Biden administration was trying to do a lot of that with green energy, which you can't do in just every area. But there's been a big push as of lately for nuclear development. 3 weeks ago, President Trump issued 4 executive orders promoting nuclear energy development. And one of those was specific to military bases. And I felt that that was a big push from his administration to develop nuclear. What's great about nuclear is you take it right to the load. You cut down on a lot of transmission. It's hard to build transmission these days. Also, today's nuclear energy is not your big cooling towers or, where Homer Simpson goes to work and all that. These are SMRs, small modular reactors, that fit on the back of a semi and can generate maybe 20 megawatts or whatever size you need, and they can be buried and a lot of other different things. And so you're going to start seeing more and more studies being done across the country. And Oklahoma is going to do their own with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. And it's also a great opportunity for Enid. I mean, we're just blessed beyond measure that we have a military base here. At some point, they will be sufficient, self-sustaining. And it could be an opportunity for economic development if whatever their power generation is, natural gas, nuclear, it's probably going to be more than enough for the base, hopefully. And then you may have industry start developing around the community that can use that same energy. And then in a time of crisis, obviously it runs the base. But I'm not going to be that engineer. I'm just saying that I predicted this several months ago, and then all of a sudden the president pushed those executive orders, and so all of a sudden I feel kind of smart for a day. So hopefully by the end of the year we'll see a feasibility study for nuclear power in the state. Another reason they're doing it as a state study is so that everybody can use it. I'm sure that OG&E and PSO and all the other utilities out there have maybe done their own nuclear energy study, and it sits in a file. Nobody gets to see it except them. But when the state does it, everybody can see it, not just the utilities, but the private sector. And this goes back to behind the meter. When the private sector, your Googles of the world, who are going to be high energy users, the world of AI, they want to know where all the sweet spots are. And maybe we could be one of those sweet spots down the road. So anyway, you could have a whole study just on energy. Thought I'd give you an update from a few months ago when I brought up a few items about things that I saw on municipal government that was developing with bills being filed. There was a bill, there was actually a couple of them. Here's the one that passed for Municipal Carry Act, which allows municipal employees, expands the number of people that can maybe carry concealed firearms under certain circumstances. You might want to look into that. There was also some legislation signed that permits municipal police officers that are retiring to request to keep their municipal issued firearm and maybe award that to next of kin. Municipal elections. This one's dormant. There's been a push to try to consolidate all of these different elections into 1 month of the year, or maybe a couple different months of the year. Right now, we have our statewide state elections in November. You have your municipal elections in the spring. You have your school bonds any time of the year. And there's been a push by some to try to consolidate that all into November on one ballot. I think it's a terrible idea. You would sit there for 2 hours trying to decide what the issues are. But sometimes I believe that they do this for a reason, and that's to kill a lot of different issues. But anyway, that bill went dormant. Medical marijuana, I didn't see much activity, quite honestly, on medical marijuana this year. Just a few years ago, it was a hot item. And there were a couple where you allowed cities to tax medical marijuana. There was another one to creating a increasing the distance between medical marijuana dispensaries and schools. And that was authored by the pro tem of the Senate. It went dormant. Municipal finance, here's a couple municipal or OML request bills. If you recall, when we were visiting with our legislators at the start of session, there was a bill to try to close a loophole on car wash memberships that were circumventing the city sales tax, and that went dormant. And this one is probably my biggest disappointment. Why we can't not get this across the line. And we have the right authors, everything. Eliminates sales tax fraud by renewing the sale for resale tax exemptions annually rather than a 3-year schedule. There's a lot of fraud behind the scenes when people open up businesses and then all of a sudden they're shut down, but then they get to use their tax exemption for the next 2 years. Hopefully someday this gets cleaned up. I want to say this is like the 3rd year that we've been trying to clean this up. Tort reform. That was a big topic this year. There were a couple bills. This one was our favored bill, as I recall from our meetings that Senator Paxton was carrying. And they switched authors in the House. I visited with the new author. I could tell that, and he was the chairman of the committee, I could tell that he just wasn't excited about hearing it. And I hate to say it like this, Carol, cover your ears, but sometimes when you need attorneys, it's great, but when you're fighting them, it can be problematic. And legislators who happen to be attorneys do kind of congregate on this issue and start controlling the issue. That's, you know, when it comes to tort reform, anything tort reform or workers' comp, they huddle pretty tight and control a lot of the issues. But enough said. You can listen. Again, Carol.
This one will be important to us in the future.
Yeah.
So probably we need to start working with you now to figure out how we change that so we get it fixed.
Well, there was one that passed, and that was Senate Bill 1168 by Hall and Trey Caldwell. There's another Caldwell from the Lawton area. And this sets some sewer overflow liability limits at $225,000 per occurrence for municipalities with populations under 150. That's us, and there's a higher limit for bigger cities. And the bill also establishes some new liability caps.
Those caps seem pretty high. I'm not sure that's the one we want, but we probably need to visit with the lawyers that are friendly to this legislation.
There might be a few, maybe 1 or 2, I don't know. But you know, it's an issue that's tricky, really tricky to deal with issues like that. We had a labor issue pop up towards the end of session. You know, in Senate Bill 1424, I think there was an amendment that started expanding. First of all, I believe city government already has labor disputes and establishments for arbitration, that you already have some guidelines that you follow. But the legislation that was being introduced was trying to stretch that time frame out a little bit too long in the eyes of municipal government. And So
So
that,
dormant doesn't mean dead. It means
that
we'll
is a
have to
very
deal with
good
this
point.
one next time. We don't need that.
yeah,
I can tell you. I mean,
that's a very good point. When I say dormant, it's dormant for now. We just finished our first session of the 60th legislature. Next year starts the second session. So every bill that you see up here that says dormant is still alive when session starts again. And that makes next year twice as tough sometimes, because you have to watch that dormant legislation that comes out of hibernation, and they will. There's always a few that will surprise you. Open records, this was an OML priority. They established some new guidelines with regard to open records and being able to charge up front if it's, I'm sure you've had some open record requests that are very expensive, and you want to make sure you get paid for those. There's some other provisions that were under this bill, but this was the first one I saw in here. And that was one of the bills that was signed into law without a signature. Animal shelters, this one was interesting. House Bill 1421. I don't even know what the original bill was, but all of a sudden an amendment showed up in the last 2 weeks of session, and basically it was preemption legislation, taking away all your municipal authority on the sale of cats and dogs and other pets. And the amendment didn't come from PETA. It came from a like organization that probably wasn't maybe as aggressive as PETA, but it really caught everybody off surprise. It caught everybody by surprise. It was preemptive language, and a lot of people started chiming in on this one, and it went dormant. In fact, Senator Green was trying to draft up a different amendment that wasn't quite as harsh on the preemptive side, and but it never got heard again on the Senate floor. So whenever we see amendments show up out of nowhere, especially in the last few weeks, it's always a little suspect. And if it's a good amendment this year, to be good next year. So give it some time to simmer a little bit. But anyway, it went dormant.
How do they manage to get an amendment looked at on the floor whenever it's difficult to even get legislation heard? I mean,
you go to the author, and it's about relationships, and you go to the author and say, hey, I've got this friendly amendment, and the author looks at it and goes, and they agree that, oh yeah, I think I can get that passed, and I just put it on the bill, and it just is that quick. And it was going to be a floor amendment, and it circumvented the committee process. And anytime you see a floor amendment, you got to pay attention, especially if it has nothing to do with the bill, but it's germane to the title of law that they're working in. So I understand your point. Sometimes it's almost simpler to sneak it in later than go through the process.
Back to our tort reform.
Yeah.
Sounds like we need to get it in a different committee, right? With somebody that's receptive.
I don't think you can control that. I think it's just.
Well, I know I can't, but
yeah, no,
you are the guy that can manipulate the system for us.
That's a floor leader decision as to where those committee assignments.
The floor leader's the one you're talking about, the Speaker of the House that does the floor amendments?
Floor leaders, yeah, they usually make those decisions. And sometimes bills end up in certain committees, you don't even know why, but it's a lot to do with how many bills they're hearing in that committee, and they try to spread them around, try to get close. So I do want to point you to, if you get your OML emails, or you can go online and go to their government relations segment of the website, and you can find these legislative bulletins. And these last three really do a great job of spelling out everything that just happened with municipal government. There's tons of bills that they covered with a little bit of extra commentary on each one. They did a fantastic job. So May 16, 23, and 30, I think they're listed. Maybe the dates are a little bit different on the website, but anyway, I would invite you to read those bulletins because, again, they do a great job to kind of keeping you up to date with regard to that. Almost done. Interim study request deadline. So this is going to be a big, huge year for interim studies at the state capitol. It's not an election year, so they're going to spend a lot of time studying some of the issues. Both the House and Senate have until June 27th to request interim studies for approval. So if you have a topic in mind that you want them to investigate, give me a shout, or we can call on our local legislators to introduce those. They'll be publishing those lists in the month of July. The Senate will publish their list on July 3rd. The House will publish theirs on the 25th. And then Senate already set a deadline for October 31st to hear all those interim studies. The House will be similar. I know Gerald has already informed me he wants me to go to an OML meeting next month where the process starts all over again as far as ideas. So, you know, putting our priorities on paper, and if we have some actual legislation that we want to push, now's the time to put those to paper and get them talked about. So,
Carol's got an extensive list, so Carol will get with you and get you to carry the water for us.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Well, just a couple. One is, because I know at the last ERDA meeting, I think the speaker was really focusing on the importance of getting behind the meter. And I mean, does it appear to be a boon just on the verge of happening in Oklahoma now that we've got the possibility of that?
Yeah, I believe so, because the big push are these data centers. Evidently, the world of AI is going to create more and more data centers, and they are high energy users. And, you know, for instance, the aluminum smelting factory, that's going to be a big draw. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. It's an engineering issue, but it's going to be, if you want to attract those big companies like that, you're going to have to solve the energy equation. Mm-hmm. That's the next big hurdle to get over. And, you know, Enid has done a great job with water. Mm-hmm. We're good to go with water. I'm very excited about that. The next hurdle we got to get over is energy. Yeah. And, you know, if you want to attract the big companies, you got to find some electricity. And that's why I kind of lean on the whole Vance Air Force Base thing, because, you know, we're lucky. A lot of communities don't have that. You have Trump pushing nuclear power. You have bases trying to be energy independent, right, for various reasons. So we need to piggyback on that. And all of a sudden, if I'm a big CEO of some high energy user of some data farm, I would look at all the cities that have military bases, because it's going to be the federal government that makes the first move on like a nuclear plants, because you've not had new nuclear plants built in the United States in decades. There's about 95 of them, but they're mainly east of here. And it's going to be federal government takes that very first step. That's what's exciting, is to maybe watch that and maybe try to piggyback on that, create that momentum. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay.
Curt, last week I was at a conference. We had a speaker come in that was from the oil and gas industry. Mm-hmm. And two things I want to tell you on that, which I'm sure you already know, but one, the days of all the rigs and all those things, he said, that is over. You will never see that again, because they can go in now and put 12 to 14 wells down, you know, in the horizontal drill. But now they can even do what they call horseshoe wells that go way out, come all the way back, and go behind them.
Wow.
So they've also gone from, when he started, I think he told me 2 years to drill a well, to a matter of months, you know. So I guess I say that if we're thinking we're waiting on an economic boom to come back on the oil and gas industry in and around Enid, probably not going to happen. They'll always pump it, but we're not going to see what we had in the past, is what he was saying. The other thing he mentioned was, and I was curious how he would see wind and solar. He starts talking about the data processing centers. He said, you better hope you've got every type of energy out there that you can get, because when this passes you over, it won't come back around.
I believe it.
And so he goes, these folks that are wanting the wind turbines taken down and, you know, all those type of things, he goes, you're asking to be left behind.
Yeah.
Is what you're asking. So it's very interesting coming from an oil and gas guy.
That's wild.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I've been working on the wind stuff for 17, 18 years. I had a front row seat when wind started happening.
Yeah.
And it built out 5, 10 times bigger than I ever dreamed. And now I'm sitting here going, okay, nuclear's next. And as I'm saying that, all of a sudden President Trump is pushing his agenda, not just one executive order, 4. And I don't think it's going to stop, because the data centers, they evidently use a lot of electricity, a lot. And that's where our society is moving, is, you know, technology. And so, again, that's why I let's lean on these military bases a little bit, because they're going to be the first ones to move, because they can. And that's, again, my personal opinion. But
yeah.
so
It's just an interesting observation last week. So.
All right.
The only other thing I had, since he covered the bill where municipal elected officials can now carry weapons, so who do we turn our order in for a 9mm Glock?
You know, I was actually going to talk to the PD after the meeting. I'll get back with you.
Thank you.
You probably have to be approved somehow.
Oh, damn
There's
it.
probably an
Okay.
approval
So,
process.
well.
You know, that it's it's an interesting topic, and it's one that others take very seriously. And you saw where the elected officials up in Minnesota were, and it's terrible. How can we make the elected officials safer, you know? Yeah. And so that's kind of where all that comes from, but there's probably other means by which you can make it safer. Yeah. But anyway, it's that kind of discussion will never go away. But it is serious business.
Other questions?
I guess to piggyback on that,
yeah.
A year ago or 2 years ago, there was discussions about increasing penalties for those that did commit an act against a public official.
Assault?
Assault, yeah.
Yes, I recall that.
And also like the...
So
it's the same as assault on
code officers. And
yeah. So interesting story. I also represent the Public Transit Association, and that's where I work on their funding. But they were also pushing for stronger penalties on assault of public transit workers. Ever since COVID, I think the public is getting a little bit more bold about verbally assaulting, physically assaulting transit community a little bit, maybe people on the bus or the bus driver. It's toned down quite a bit. I think a lot of it had to do with COVID restrictions and policies. But we passed legislation this year to clarify a little stronger what assault is on a public transit worker, because the current statute, as it read, you had to prove that they were trying to take over the bus or the van. And that's kind of a gray area. And so we put language in there that clarified what assault is, and also language that protected the passengers, and try to come down a little bit harder on the perpetrators that commit assault in public or on public transit. Now, as far as the workers, the legislature doesn't have, we were lucky. Assault on public transit was already a felony, but it was vague. The legislature does not have an appetite to make assault a felony where it already isn't a felony. They just don't have that appetite. So you have to be creative and think of other ideas, whether it be fines or other prison time or whatever the case. But felonies convictions are hard to come by as far as new legislation.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? Thank you, Curt. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Keep doing more.
Okay.
Item 3.2, update on the new audio, video, and voting system in the commission chambers. I think, Kent, this is you.
This is cool. This is very cool.
Yeah. So why is there a picture of you and Dane that comes up whenever it loads?
Because we have become buddies over the last 8 months.
Okay.
So just a little background on this. This project has been on my radar for about 2 years now. Not mine, but the IT department. Last fall, we had some problems with some of the TVs flaking in and out, and this one turning pink, and the middle projector just, the bulb just, and it helps when the CFO sits right there and she can't see the TV because it's flaking out. So she said, I think it's time. And so last fall we got together, we got IT and Dane got together, and we got 3 vendors, told them what we were looking for, and kind of hashed it all out. And my goal was to have better visual displays, get rid of, has anybody noticed the voting system, voting box is gone? Yeah. So we, in the process of this, we were actually looked at a few. Some of them were really clunky, some of them were really expensive. We looked at some, Summer was looking at software, we looked at some of theirs, and it was just, didn't really work out. So I had pretty much given up on the idea that the voting system thing wasn't going to happen. And then, so we got the project all approved, got paperwork all done, and the next day, Dane goes, hey, I think I can make this voting system work. And I said, I think it'll be under $1,000. And I said, do it. He goes, don't you think we need to get Erin's approval? And I said, trust me, she's going to go for this in a heartbeat. So what you'll notice is all these displays will show the same exact thing that's on these displays. So, and he hit the button just a hair too soon. I'm going to let Dane talk about his wonderful voting system that he made.
I didn't write a speech for this. Well, this is it right here. So you've got a module to one side of your monitor, a little silver thing, and it's just like, you know, it's pretty straightforward. You got a yay and a nay button. And so when the mayor calls for a vote, Summer will make sure it's clear and on. She has to turn it on. She has to enable it before it'll work. And you'll see it light up kind of dimly when she does that. And then Kent will select it, or Mark or Daryl will select it back there so it'll be on the screen. And then when you guys cast your vote, and you
go ahead
and do that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I knew there'd be some negative people in the audience.
So the one thing that's different,
I knew Patterson would vote no.
The one thing that's different about this is you can actually change the vote too.
It what?
You can actually change the vote. So if you...
You're on the wrong one, Courtney.
Yeah.
Am I?
Yes, Commissioner, yeah, sorry. So everybody over here,
like I'm taking
your
Rob's.
Microphone and your voting thing are kind of on the side towards the middle. You guys, it's the side to the middle. And there's an extra spot there. And what I didn't say is we decided to put it in enough so that MAPC could use it. So you guys, Scott, Gerald,
Threw me off.
and that spot, and Summer have one too, but it won't do anything on this screen. There's another screen for MAPC, and all of them can work. So yes, remember that.
Can I change other votes or just mine?
I can.
Okay.
I can back there, yes.
So talk to him.
What else?
It's pretty cool.
Any other questions?
No, I like it a lot.
We've had a lot of excitement the last couple of weeks getting this all put in. I have found out that the mayor's just like a little kid at Christmas that's always peeking in doorways, trying to look at what you're doing. We caught him twice, so.
Have you put a patent in for this?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
You should, Dane. You should. This is great.
Cool. Very cool.
Thank you, Dane.
It's actually almost pretty simplistic. I mean, but it works. It's kind of like the voting system. Somebody, when we were doing all this, somebody said, "Well, I think that was put back in the 1980s." So it worked all those years.
Yeah.
We got our money's worth.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, I like it. It's a good system. Also, like, I couldn't always read when we had small print back there, and so it really helps to have right in front of me.
There's a slide, and I was going to have it ready to bring up, but there's a slide like when Aaron was doing the Call Lake that's got nothing but numbers on it.
Yes.
Dane could stand back there and read every single number that was on that slide.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
way better.
It'll be good.
You also, you know, we just heard about how, Curt, you were telling us about how we need more and more power. Well, now we got more power up here. We can charge devices too, right?
Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Stallings had a conversation with me several months ago. He says, "You know what I'd really like to see is a place to plug in my USB so I can charge my iPad." Now you have them.
Thank you.
So
Great.
don't make fun of the covers. Those are just temporary.
Those are Pringle lids, right? Potato chips.
Big Pringle cans, yes. So we're going to find something else to put on there, but well,
you can see what's under it.
You can see what's under them, yes.
I thought it was a cheap beer coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very nice. Thank y'all.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Okay. Item 3.3, discussion of the potential need for speed bumps or speed humps on city streets to address traffic speed concerns.
Yeah, and I just I wanted to preface this by saying that Commissioner Roberts were responding to a request you had to look at these devices. When we wrote the agenda item, we said speed bumps, speed humps, but we've learned that the proper term is traffic calming. So we're going to learn about that tonight and maybe try to figure out if this will work for us and how we might be able to do it. And there might be some questions and we might have to follow up some more. But thank you for putting together and doing some research and doing a good presentation.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Gerald. Yeah, we can all get in our calm states now to begin this presentation. So when I started this out, what I wanted to do is find some comparables of communities around the state, and that led me into some research. And I came across a really good study and a really good program that was put together, and that's where a lot of my information came from. It was from the city of Norman, so and I referenced them here in my presentation. But I kind of wanted to preference that what I'm presenting to you tonight is where that came from, and this is where the idea kind of came from. And so I'm sorry, I put my slides in the wrong order. I didn't like the order I had them when I started studying. But to talk about traffic calming, it really began in the 1980s in the United States, and it kind of started earlier than that in the overseas. But the purpose behind traffic calming is to reduce the speed and the traffic flows on residential streets. And by definition, traffic calming, you can read that definition there, but to shorten it up, it's to make to reduce traffic, speed, and volumes to make residential streets safer. And that's kind of the idea behind that. And most of it applies to local and collector streets, not your arterial streets, obviously. And then so backing up, historically the solutions that were used was increased PD patrol and traffic control devices. And so, you know, the problem with police enforcement, you know, gosh, those guys are expensive. And I'm just kidding, but you know, they are. They're expensive, and they're always limited on staff. You're never going to have enough officers to cover every single residential street. And so another solution is traffic control devices. And traffic control devices are typically signs. So speed limit signs, traffic, you know, or stop signs, you know, slow down signs. But more traffic control actually requires more traffic enforcement. So that's really not a very good solution, and that's where traffic calming comes into play. These are typically, as it's described there in that definition, you know, they're physical changes that you can do to a street that will reduce speed and reduce traffic volumes. Some different types. There's all kinds of types that are out there. I just gave a few examples here and some pictures here. You know, rumble strips, radar monitoring, center island medians, call them neck down, speed bumps, police presence, traffic circles, and speed tables. And these are all just different kinds of examples. There's a whole bunch more that are out there. And, you know, there's a couple there that I'd like to throw out, you know, just as you know, we're talking about extremes. You know, from a speed bump, traffic calming can also be as harsh, I guess is a way to say it, as closing streets mid-block, or closing streets so that through traffic can't be, you don't have a good running start on a street to where you get high levels of speeds, and it will reduce the traffic volumes because traffic has to go elsewhere since it's not a through street. Again, those are just examples of different kinds of traffic calming that are out there. And so looking at a traffic calming program, and as I mentioned, the city of Norman has a program, and their process is a 9-step process from the time that a citizen puts in a request for such a type of thing. The program includes 25 different types of traffic calming devices, and that's back to those slides. A lot of those are included on their list. And then also included in that program is actually a removal process of said traffic calming device. Which is, I think that's kind of an important key to this, because, you know, after something is installed, you know, it may not be the best fit for that neighborhood, and so it would give the people of those neighborhoods an opportunity to have it removed. Some qualification criteria that the city of Norman used, and I just use them as examples here, but this would be criteria that we would look at to set the limits of where and when these can be implemented. Traffic volumes, the number of speed-related accidents within a certain time window, and then also locations near sidewalks, parks, and schools. And then I want to talk a little bit into this 85% percentile speed of vehicles over greater than 8 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. I think that's a very key component to this, because if you have a neighborhood and it's literally one person speeding all the time, you know, that's not what traffic calming is for. That's where PD needs to come in and play. It's when you have a high average of people speeding at a high rate on that particular street. And so I think that's a key component that would need to be implemented in a program if we were to proceed in something of this nature. We would also want to look at excluded routes, obviously emergency routes, and then snowplow routes. We don't want anything impeding the fire department or the police department, and then also we don't want to install speed bumps on a street that's going to be snow plowed. Obviously, it will not make it through the snow plowing. And then also some other ideas, just some other concepts that we would want to include within the program is any kind of specific types that the city would not want to use. I just put no speed bumps as an example, but no speed. It'd be any particular kind of or type of traffic calming device from those examples that I provided would need to be written in there as to be excluded. So when talking traffic calming, some of the pros, they're typically effective. They're one-time capital costs. They're typically low maintenance. They will lower traffic counts and lower speeds. Some cons to them, you actually increase your emergency vehicle response times. You divert traffic. So I wanted to put that one, I want to talk a little bit on that one too, because when you install, a speed bump on Street A, most of the time people are going to try to avoid that speed bump, and so they're going to go around to Street B. So now you're increasing traffic over there. So there's kind of there's a con there. You're going to shift traffic volumes to different streets. Some of the traffic calming devices will reduce traffic or the availability of street parking. And then also some of them aren't always aesthetically pleasing, as I jokingly put there in my pictures there. But so to kind of summarize this in terms of what I've learned in my research and everything is, traffic calming has a potential to help. I think it would need to be set up into a program, kind of as the city of Norman. And I meant to have the website for that available, but I'm sorry I didn't get it to you. If anybody wants to take a look at it, let me know. But it would need to be a program that benefits neighborhoods and doesn't punish neighborhoods just because of a small number of violators to the speeding things. But that's my presentation. If you have any questions or comments, happy to take them.
Well, I think as we ponder this, I know what I recall, Commissioner, you talked to me about was maybe trying something on a pilot basis at a certain amount of money. And so I think we could probably look at trying to put together a program. I can already think of some things we might want to consider if we're going to do this. To me, I think local streets and collectors is good, but I think we might want to focus on local streets and streets that have either a posted speed limit or no posted speed limit of 25 miles an hour, maybe. Simply because those are streets that maybe we're talking about. Streets with higher speed limits, I think it's going to be difficult, and I think we'll end up doing some of the things you're talking about. But you've done a lot of research on this, so it'd be good to have some discussion here. We probably might need to study it a little bit more and maybe try to put together a pilot program. I will tell you, we sort of did a pilot program. It's been several years ago up in the area. It was in Ward 4. It's not North Enid, but it's that housing addition.
Chisholm Creek.
Chisholm Creek, thank you. The part that's in the city. And we put the rumble strip, so I'm glad to see that as a traffic calming device. We didn't really scientifically measure whether it was successful. I don't remember who exactly asked for it, but I think there were several, there's more than one person. But over time, there was a continual sound of people that didn't want it anymore. And so we ended up filling it in, which is where you touched on the removal. So I think also what's important to me with the pilot program would be, what is the criteria? How many people have to ask for it? Or because many times we'll find that people will ask for it and then people will hate it. And if they hate it, they can just probably try Street B. So those are some considerations for us, but it might be a good time if there is any discussion today to give us some input as we try to look at maybe trying to put together a pilot program.
Yeah, and one thing I'd just like to add on to what you said, what you mentioned there is the city of Norman, the one they used actually had through the I didn't really talk into the 9 steps, but the 9 steps of whether or not a location qualified for it would been like, okay, will a stop sign help here, or will a speed limit sign? And maybe there's a half a mile stretch of city street that doesn't have, nobody knows the speed limit on it, type of thing. I know all non-posted or 25 miles an hour, but not everybody knows that. And so, you know, there's some low-cost items that we could do possibly in those locations prior to doing something that is an actual physical change to the street, as a traffic calming would be.
I think we probably should develop a plan and have the low-cost items. I mean, these guys have done a lot of research, and you obviously, sounds like we've had some experience with it. Just come up with a plan that we can implement if we see that there's a place that's applicable. I had an experience with it in an HOA at another location, and as a board member, we caught a lot of grief about them. And this was fairly low speed, but they're hard on your car when you hit those things, and people really get tired of them quickly if you have to constantly go across them. So the plan, I would think, would need some out measure, some way to decide that we don't like this. We don't think it's necessary, and maybe some quantitative means of evaluating whether it works. So there are lots of transportation people you guys know what to do, and just come up with a plan. That's what I would suggest.
Very cool. I'd be for that also, Commissioner. Those things irritate me to death, but it's probably because I'm driving too fast whenever I go over them. So, but I do think there are several places in Enid that I've always been fearful that we're going to end up and get a child hit through there because they just come down there so fast. Johnson's one of them on the south side. I've seen them come down through there 50, 60 miles an hour. So that being said, I'd like to move forward and at least see some criteria. I would like to see that once we put them in, we try them for a period of time.
Yes, sir. Yes, yeah, that's
so that we don't get one person complaining, we take them out next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
so.
They went into a little bit better detail on there. Like I think they had to be in place for a year, and it required us 75% of the property owners along said stretch of property of street had to request the removal. You know, there's a lot of things that you can tie into that as well. Yes, and one thing, just kind of I forgot to mention this in here as well, but doing this research and study, it kind of as we have new community developments come into town, residential developments and things, you know, recognizing the different things that they do in the newer residential developments that are actually calming methods. You know, not having just 4 or 5 blocks of a straightaway, right off the entry is a traffic calming measure. You know, now a lot of most neighborhoods come in and they have nice soft curves and stuff like that. So, just
as far as like getting community input, as far like a trial program, would you recommend people use C-Click or send an email or have their road to be considered for this?
Yes, I think probably we will contemplate that in the pilot plan that we bring, and I think it's going to be very important. How many people? Because certainly if one person can say, I'm sick and tired of these people, I need to get off my lawn and stop driving so fast, and then their neighbor's going to think, I can't believe you put this in. So we need some way of, I don't know if it's a certain number of the people that live on that street probably, which is another reason why it works, I think, maybe well for local streets. I think clearly we're not even talking about arterials, because arterials are meant to move people and they're built safer. So yes, we will cover that in the pilot plan that we come up with. I think any of our methods would be a way to get the ball rolling, either C-Click Fix, a phone call, a commissioner submits a constituent request or something.
Okay. For now, why don't y'all put together some criteria, maybe from some other places, and then if any of the commissioners get calls, let's just get those to Gerald and he can get them to Jason, and then you guys may have some ideas also, some streets that would be appropriate, and then we'll come up with a pool of, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 streets, and then try to decide which ones we think fit that criteria the better or the best.
Right.
right?
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to do it. Is just from a starting from the starting gates. Just get a few suggestions and look at them.
Yeah.
See where you know where the situations may fit the best. I think that, you know, it's that like I said, the examples or the criteria that I gave there, you know, there are no hard set fast rules on it. This is just the examples that I found, and I think they're all valid in their weights and they're valid in their criteria. Whether or not it's 8 miles an hour greater than the speed limit, I don't know if that's, I don't know what that looks like, I guess, when it actually comes down to the study. So.
Sure.
I think we'll focus on the pilot plan first. Ideally, you certainly give us your request, but I'd like to get ahead of it with the pilot plan before, so we kind of know what our criteria is. I think we'll work on that, and potentially we could, if we wanted to, have a public meeting, but this will probably take us, I'm going to guess, I'm looking at you guys, maybe a couple months to put this together, juggling all the other projects that we're working on. So.
And when this came up last time, if you go back to the pictures you had there, my property owners in Albuquerque, the one that they said was so effective was a speed table. That's exactly what they had. They thought really dramatically reduced. So you might see if that's got any more effectiveness than some of the others, but they thought that was very effective in knocking down without too much, you know, bump to the driver.
Yeah.
And I have a question. Do we have some of those radar monitoring systems already?
They used one in my neighborhood and it did nothing.
Okay.
I think it was kind of like a game for people driving through.
Well, I was just thinking, I know up on the North Cleveland process that we have going on, a lot of people are going through that neighborhood and the landowners feel like they're speeding through there. I just think that setting up in there might slow some people down. I can tell you from personal experience, when I'm going through Kingfisher and those things start flashing that you're speeding, it does make you slow down. Not that I've seen it on other drivers, but it does get your attention. And one of my thoughts has always been, I wonder if those are hooked up to somewhere at the police department where they have you on a camera. So I just wondered if we had those, and if we didn't, should we get some of those so that when we have situations like the North Cleveland project, we could use those in the neighborhoods that are affected?
Yeah, I don't know that.
We do have some, Captain Miller?
We currently have two. The two that we have now, we replaced our older ones, which actually took pictures of the cars driving by. Then we realized that we were paying a lot of money for cars driving over 5 miles over the speed limit. By the time it took a picture, they was gone anyway. But we actually could hook to those websites and run reports on how many cars went through the area, how fast they were driving, and we run those reports actually quite often. My traffic sergeant, we have two right now. I think the last time I saw it was out at Garland and Randolph. They were running, had some complaints out there, and normally ours are complaint generated. Someone called in and said, can you monitor this area? We'll usually run one of those out there, because anytime you see a police car, you automatically slow down. But if you put one of those up there, a lot of times they'll see it and it'll just show the speed limit. Sometimes we just leave it off. So you don't actually know how fast you're going when you go through there, and that's usually when we're running reports to see how fast people are actually driving. If you see one that's not working, that's probably what we're doing. They are battery generated. I think the two we got now, I think we actually have to go out and download the data on them, because it was like $1,000 a month or whatever to run all the data, and it was run through 5G and everything. So we've reduced the ones that we got to a smaller one, but we still use them quite often.
Was there ever a brown Escalade reported?
Oh, yes, often.
Quite often.
For a friend.
Yeah.
Those may be more cost effective in the end as we look at that.
And that's really good to know, because that's, I mean, that's where a lot of that data to back up the need for these that's where we would start. That's where that would come from. So.
And then that helps generate where you go and do enforcement.
Yes.
And so I know we are looking at enhanced enforcement now. which serves two purposes, right?
Right.
Protects the public, and it does raise revenue for the city of Enid. So, but I know we don't get that much because people are slowing down. Right, Commissioner? So.
Good. Any other questions or comments regarding traffic calming? Okay. Thank you, Jason. Stay up there. 3.4, update on the Cleveland Street Widening project.
Yeah, so thank you. Not a calm topic for a lot of people, but so I'm going to update you on the Cleveland Street Widening project. Of course, this is a project that we partnered with ODOT to widen this street out. Right now, so kind of a project overview of what's all been completed there. The water line has been completely relocated. The area drainage projects, which those are the areas that are there in the green there, the area drainage projects have been completed. The railroad crossing is currently under construction. Stormwater drainage for Cleveland Street is under construction, and sidewalks and trail as well as the street widening is all under construction at this time. So just I got a few pictures here for you. So this is the railroad crossing, and you're actually looking south there towards that's the apartments there next to Walmart. The traffic control devices that the railroad, that BNSF is the ones that responsible for, those are all in place. The contractor still needs to get the center median islands and the concrete curbs and gutters as well as approaches completed as well there at the street. I didn't include in the picture, but I wanted to get a better picture of this, but I didn't. So you see these large pipes that are off here to the side. Those are the large culverts that are actually going to be installed underneath the railroad tracks. The bore and jack for the installation of those is supposed to begin later this week and go into next week.
And it's my understanding that will help that water that backs up right there, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I know we have issues there in that
Yes,
cul-de-sac. Okay.
Yeah, yes, a little zoom in. I would zoom in there a little bit better if I could, but yes, these pipes that I'm discussing there are located right there, and those will help with that drainage that backs up within this neighborhood right here. To be honest with you, the entire project will help with that drainage situation as well. But yes, those will also help as well. Okay. So the drainage items, drainage structures that are within the project area. This picture was taken last week, I believe, June 9th. So I had some updated pictures this morning. Where they've got this is all laid out with rebar and all ready to go basically for the concrete pour. So they're moving right along. They lack this structure and then one other small structure before they will be completed with the drainage structures along that stretch of the roadway. I apologize too. My contacts are messed up today and I can't see that far away. That's why I keep looking at my tablet here. The sidewalks and trails that are along the project. Oh, going back a slide, sorry about that. So the plan right now is for the drainage structures to be completed June 20th. That probably got bumped up back a few days because of the recent rains. I'm still planning on that being done here probably in the next 3 to 4 days, or sorry, June 23rd, June 24th time frame. So construction on the sidewalks as well as the street widening. The sidewalks, this picture here is kind of looking out along the street. That's Jumbo's back there in the background and Hunter's Hills here off to the left. So basically the area is kind of cleared and prepped. They were going to begin stabilization once they completed the box located back up there, that one that I had pictured there. So once that's done, they're going to start stabilizing. And basically, once they get it stabilized, they'll get the asphalt down, the first layer of asphalt down, and they'll begin installing the curbs and gutters. So it's planned right now for the sidewalks and trail to be completed July 30th. And then the overall completion of the street widening would be done around August 8th. I put out a press release last week or so, just putting out that the rest of the street will be closed, the portion up there next to Jumbo's. So that area is closed and will remain closed until sometime around July 1st, the holiday weekend. They're going to reopen that. By that point, they will have a layer of asphalt down and the curbs and gutters installed so that traffic will be able to move in and out of there. It just won't be completely done. And they'll have that portion up there near Jumbo's, giving better some traffic egress for the store.
How are they getting their trucks in and out? Are they able to still get their trucks?
Jumbo's? Yes, sir. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you probably haven't been over there because it's kind of a dead end street right now. But so currently, right now, that they're bringing in their delivery trucks. They come down this way along the back side of it, and a concrete pad was built off to it'd be the southwest corner down there of that area, and that gives them a way to approach their dock from the south, from when they used to approach it from the west. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but sometimes the trucks would actually would block Cleveland Street as they were backing up to the docks there. And so they kind of rotated their dock, rearranged their dock set up there, moved a dumpster back out of the way a little ways, and so now they're going to be able to receive shipments from that dock. Once we get completed with the roadway, they'd be kind of come in their typical way and then come in that way and be able to just pull into the south and then back up to the north. So
very good.
I'd like to make a comment about that. The city staff worked real closely with the Jumbo guys.
I heard that.
They were concerned about being able to move those trucks. And Jason and his guys and Raleigh, they all work together. And I think if you talk to the people at Jumbo right now, they're thinking it's not perfect, but it sure works a whole lot better than we thought it was going to work. So
good. Thank you for working with them. They're friends of the city. So.
Yes. So we'll have a first layer of asphalt down, have the curbs and gutter in place by July 1st, so that we can have that north portion of Cleveland opened to allow traffic to flow in and out of there. We'll close it back off July 7th, and by then, so July 7th to about August 8th is when they'll put in their final lifts of asphalt, do some of the touch-up work, and they'll be done with the project. August 8th is when all lanes of traffic will be open to the public. I say all lanes, it may be the inside. Traffic will be open on August 8th. I don't know if it'll be all lanes due to striping and stuff, but I think that's a good solid date for them to have the project completed and ready for traffic.
Was there some big issues that happened? Because when this first started, I thought it was going to be completed a long time ago. So I've had a lot of people ask questions about that. Was there some big setbacks that caused the date to be so much later?
There were. We had some utility conflicts that came into play. You know, when I release these projects to go to ODOT for letting and stuff, I have clearance basically of all utilities. Well, I actually had utilities that came in. I sent off for the clearance, and the utilities came in and installed in between that time. So they did not get located in the right places. So okay. Yes, I had some conflicts with some utilities.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
As far as the sidewalks, how wide are the sidewalks? Are they?
So I got trails on the east side. Yeah, trails on the east side, which are there would be 10 foot, and then I believe the ones on the west side are 6 foot.
So there will be walks on both sides?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
That'll be nice.
All right. Other questions, comments? No? Thanks, Jason.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the update. 6:23, Corey, I'm going to push you to over into the regular meeting, if that's okay. So with that being said, I will adjourn, and we will pick back up at 6:30. We are adjourned.